Now that we've talked about hard coat, one coat stucco, which is the most common type of stucco found along the Wasatch Front, let's cover the other major stucco type, which can also be found here in Utah. This other type is known as EIFS. Instead of using cement and chicken wire as a base, it uses foam panels like this here, and fiberglass mesh placed over the panels are directly applied to the plywood of the home. EIFS is short for Exterior Insulation and Finish System. In an EIFS system, foam panels are applied directly to the wall. A thin base coat is applied over a fiberglass mesh, and then acrylic stucco finish is applied over the base coat. On a barrier system, the drainage plane is intended to be entirely on the outside surface of the stucco. There are no provisions for water management behind the foam.
What we commonly find is that the very important positive connections at the windows and doors have been left out. This connection is meant to bridge the different materials, like a metal window and the stucco exterior. This is an engineered connection which requires that a gap is left between the stucco and the window. The foam must be back wrapped with mesh and base coat, and before the application of the finish, a foam backer rod and a very specific sealant is placed in the gap.
The procedure for installing an approved positive connection at windows and doors is so labor-intensive that it can easily save the builder 1/3 of the stucco cost by leaving it out. This is a synthetic stucco system. It's an EIFS barrier system, and at the roof-to-wall connection above, water's been getting behind the system and traveling between the stucco finish and the foam, and it's delaminated. And you can see here that there's been a separation between the finish and the foam. There's no building paper or water management provided behind this type of a system. And as we take this off, we'll see what effects it might have on the OSB plywood. Synthetic stucco systems are very good at concealing dry rot and problems that are going on behind them. This particular homeowner didn't have a complaint about water intrusion. Matter of fact, had no idea that any of this kind of thing was going on. It was just our guess that it would be. The Salt Lake City home we've been looking at is 10 years old. This stucco was removed in late September, which is a very dry time of the year. Yet the plywood behind the stucco is completely saturated. Not only is it saturated, but it has lost all its structural integrity. 10 years of being wet has ruined this wafer board sheeting. Because it has been left so long, the dry rot has progressed into the structural framing members. These are much more difficult to replace. The idea behind a barrier synthetic stucco system is that the drainage plane is here on the outside. There's two main reasons why the ICBO pulled the approval on these. Number one, they found that even in the seams, there was water getting through back to the OSB plywood that now is exposed because there's no paper behind this. And secondly, that it was too easy for contractors to leave out this detail that's probably the most critical part of a barrier type system, and that is the back rod and caulking at the windows, because for this to work and for all the watershed to be on the outside of this system, no water can get in here at this point. As you can see, there's cracking and separation already taking place on this new home. The condition of the plywood below these windows is an example of what happens when there is not a proper connection between the stucco system and the edges of windows. It's clear that water gets in at these points and causes problems. This is another Salt Lake area home where stucco finish was placed over styrofoam panels. Again, the homeowners had no idea what was happening behind their stucco. This is a synthetic stucco system in Salt Lake. that in this case has got 2-inch EPS foam that was applied directly to the plywood with adhesives, and it's been applied to CDX plywood, which holds up a lot better than the oriented strand board. However, you can see here that there's been quite a bit of damage caused. This is an older stucco system, somewhere in the neighborhood of 12 to 14 years. But water's gotten behind it, was undetected, even to the present time it was undetected by the homeowner. But we opened this up and there's obviously quite a bit of dry rot to the wood framing that's holding up this column. On a residence, water management behind a synthetic stucco system is now required. Water was ultimately directed away from the building by the building paper and window flashing. If either of these essential components are missing, then the system will fail. The consequences of system failure often remain concealed for many years. The negative results of trapped water increase exponentially over time.